here's what I'm trying to get done. A debrief on a HackerRank interview, coding interview that I recently had. I screenshot the cultivation, at the end. I didn't get the entire description, but the gist is that you take any number represented, any integer represented as a single digit array of numbers, so 1 through 9 basically, or 0 through 9, and you add 1 to it. That's the problem. So one of the biggest downfalls in that interview for myself was I didn't read the whole description and the 3 examples. I read the description and I read 1 or 2 examples, and then my mind instantly, because it literally said you cannot do something to the array. I forgot what the verbiage was, but it made me think that I couldn't do anything as in adding a digit to the array. And so I was sitting there, I was kind of like getting kind of flustered. Well, if I'd have read the last bit of it, which I actually got in the screenshot, was that if you do get a 9, you just basically prepend a 1 to the array. Anyway, it took me too long to kind of solidify on the fact that what to do at 9 or whatever. And I was kind of under the gun and I wasn't thinking too well about it. In my interview, he could tell. So what he did do quickly is he established a constraint of, let's just make it work for a single digit less than 9. And I was like, okay. I was like, thank you. I was like, so once we get that problem taken care of, then I was sure that we could build on it. And I'm pretty sure he understood that part. Anyway, I built it out, and then at some point I started toward the end. I don't know if he asked it for a function or something like that, because he didn't make it a function. And at the very beginning, he just he pasted that in. He pasted the I don't know if I guess he did do that. And then I was like, HackerRank has their own way of input on these interview questions. So he was like, let's not worry about that and stuff. And I was like, I was a little confused, when we first got into this. I was trying to ask questions and stuff, but and establish some of the stop. You get the problem, solidified in my head, but I wasn't doing too well. And at some point, I very quickly I figured, okay, so we're going to have to operate on this thing in reverse. And I was thinking to do like a range length with, -1, -1, -1, which would traverse it in reverse order. But then he gave me the reverse. I had never used reverse. So I plugged that in there, but it was taking me a minute. And when I look at it now, it doesn't matter. But my head was thinking, well, how's this working? Well, it doesn't matter. You're working on the array in reverse, because I was thinking, like, is it reversing the arrays or the keys or the values of the keys and stuff? So anyway, I ended up doing, putting this in here. And then I was like, okay, I knew that if it was 10, I think before I was working on getting the 0 to 8 working, and it did. But one of the biggest issues at the end, and you can see it right here, is when, and I redid it over here. This is that code. Basically, it works in a sense, which you can see what I did right there. When you pass digits in there. So what happens if you pass a 3, you get a 4, great. But what happens if you pass, like 34, and you start running it? Then you start getting some really weird, numbers compared to what you're looking for. So I was like, I was sure this code was right or close, but if I'd have done that one little thing, that would have worked. Anyway, we ended up ending the interview on this, and I just took some time. I did it. I redid it myself based on the description, and this is what I came up with, just on my own. It didn't take too long, but it's because I understood the problem much better afterwards. Going into it, I felt like I was, and I guess maybe that's always it is. You just got to be better at doing these kind of problems, but I think reading the questions, understanding it better. I didn't do any whiteboarding. Like I think afterwards, and I did it. I did whiteboarding. And that's what got me to here. I did that, and then I started doing this one, which culminates into basically a more optimized, like code optimized, let's say, version of it here. So anyway, that's what that is. Yeah, bud. All right, my son just popped in here. Let's see here. I think that is all I wanted to go over in this video. I was just kind of basically debrief myself, just making sure I understood, how it works, why it works the way it does. Basically the else clause, like once you add the return there, you can remove that, pull this one in, and then once you drop out of the for loop, if you dropped out because you turned everything to 0, means you need to put a 1 up, prepend to 1 basically, and that was two bits of information. My interviewer he gave me was the reversed and this, because I in my head I couldn't come up with how to add a prepend. Huh? You're borrowing what? Taking my pen. Come to my office, raid it, and take my pen.
It's the raid of pillagers.
It's the pillager raid. They took a pen. Okay. Yeah, I think that's it. Like I said, I was really close. You just got to be really careful in the interviews, I guess, when at some point I made that mistake. And this was defined up here, which is, if that wasn't there, we would have gotten a trace back. But, that pretty much messed me up, I think. But is what it is. I'll move on from that. At least I very well understand this code. Yeah, I've recoded it several times, just deleting the whole thing and redoing it. Understanding how it works. Anyway, that's just the debrief on that coding interview for my friends. Thanks for watching. Bye.